All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck. I'm along with my coworker, Jordan Bianchi. Happy December, everyone. We're already into December now. This off season has been busy, at least for us, flying by. And, a couple months from now, we'll be at the Clash. So
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
It's
Bowman Gray of all places. I can't believe it still.
Yep. So today on this episode, our latest off-season edition, we're going to be talking about things we wish we could change about the season that just happened. Jordan, amazingly, in Vegas, we did not have some amazing luck. We did not hit the jackpot necessarily, but a magic genie. I visited with a magic genie in Vegas, and they were able to inform me that each of us could have 5 wishes, but the wishes could only affect things that happened in the NASCAR season that just wrapped up. So we're allowed to go back and change 5 things. We have not compared notes as usual on this so that we can, sort of react in real time. And I'm sure maybe some of them will overlap. I'd be surprised if we didn't have at least a couple that overlap, but we're going to talk about the magic genie. So this is in no particular order, by the way. Are yours in order of?
No, I want to make sure I stress that these are not in any order of 1 through 5 or anything like that.
Okay. So why don't I just start with one that maybe you already have as well. It's maybe one of the most recent. I think it is the most recent one that I would change about the season. And that is that there had never been any race manipulation at Martinsville. Is that on your list as well?
It was actually if I had to rank them, this would have been number 1 because it just put a gray cloud over what was otherwise a great race. And I'll let you continue, then I'll follow up.
So obviously, look, I really wanted, when I was making my list, I really don't want to go in and change the outcome of races. I don't want to change the outcome of the championship because that's not the genie's job, right? Like that is what it is, right? What happened. I'm not going to say, oh, I wish, like even if I was thinking about, and maybe it's on your list. I was thinking about, I should have could I put Kyle Busch continuing his streak on there, right? But if he wins a race, one of those races that he could have won, should have won, then somebody else, what happens, right? They don't win that race. So in that sense, I'm really trying not to change the outcome of things. And so you could argue that if there'd been no race manipulation at Martinsville, William Byron falls out of the Final Four. Christopher Bell is in the Final Four. However, I would argue as well that doesn't change the outcome of really anything except the Final Four, right? Because ultimately at Phoenix, the Penske cars were the fastest anyway. Yes, Christopher Bell had a bunch of laps led at one part of the race, but he wasn't going to win. He was trying as hard as he could to win. He wanted to win that race, and he didn't. So even if he was in the championship, would anything have been different? I would argue no, that the Penske cars had everybody covered there. And so ultimately, this is the difference of somebody finishing 3rd in the championship or something like that. Yes. And you would have just had, without the race manipulation hanging over everybody, that dark cloud kind of thing, as you described it. Logano would have won the championship anyway. Blaney would have finished 2nd anyway. But just the Bell would have been in there instead of Byron. And I'm not saying it because of Bell. I just don't want the race manipulation part of it. So that's where I come down on that. What about you?
I agree with everything you said largely. I do think potentially it could impact the finish, though. We've seen drivers who are in the championship 4 get raced differently at Phoenix. And even if it's just like a little, like a 0.5% or 1%, it could have changed things a little bit. Maybe the mindset of the 20 team is much different going into Phoenix. And I know they were trying really hard and they wanted to send a message, but just even that, just a little bit could have been the difference between, hey, we're going to run top 5 to winning, and who knows. But I agree with you overall that it was a bad look. This was the ugliness of this playoff format, which I really like. I do like this playoff format, but this is the ugliness of it that kind of comes from this. And we have seen this happen other times throughout NASCAR's knockout playoff format era. Kevin Harvick at Talladega, for example, where drivers do these egregious things and you're like, oh my goodness, this is not what it's supposed to be about. I just didn't like how that played out. It put a dark cloud over what was a great race. We talked so much this year about the short track package and how bad it was and how NASCAR needed to fix it. Martinsville, it was fixed. Like, that was a great race. That was what you want to see out of a short track. You had tire wear, you had comers and goers, you had all of these things. You also had a career day, and I know he was the defending champion, but this in a lot of ways to me was the defining moment of Ryan Blaney. He went to Martinsville a week after the heartbreak at Homestead, where everybody was second guessing him and all the things he could have, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And he goes to Martinsville, and not only does he win, it's how he won and that late charge and everything like that. The conversation from Martinsville to Phoenix should have been focused on Blaney and the championship, and really about Blaney though, and what he did and what a great drive he did and how he's come into his own, and that the driver who once was regarded as a choke artist is now money and clutch and all of these things, right? And it wasn't. It was about all of this other stuff. And it just really was it left a sour taste in my mouth. And throughout the whole week, there was a conversation about this and that, and what can be done, and what can NASCAR do, and NASCAR can't penalize the manufacturers, and it even carried over into Phoenix a little bit in the conversation there. And this is maybe going a little too far with this, and this is going to come up probably at other points in my list. But a lot of the conversation out of Phoenix after Logano won was about the format, right? Was he a deserving champion, that kind of thing? Because look at who was there. If Bell is in this championship 4, I don't know if we're having that same conversation, because we've got the regular season champion in Tyler Reddick. We've got a driver in Christopher Bell who was dominant throughout the regular season and the playoffs. You've got Ryan Blaney, who certainly deserved to be there. And then you still have a Joey Logano. So you still have that, Cinderella type story. I don't think the conversation is then about, oh my God, the Final Four is the weakest ever, et cetera, et cetera. This needs to be changed. That's all gone. And that's the fallout. So if you go to this magic genie and you say, hey, I need to change that, I just think big picture, this changes so much.
That's a great point. I do still think that Logano ending up as the champion would have caused some hand wringing, but Christopher Bell being in the Final Four would have changed the conversation about the Final Four, certainly because of the playoffs that he had overall were the best 10 races that anybody had this year. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point. All right. Do you want to go next on your Magic Genie list? If you were asking the Magic Genie for something, what is one of the things you were changing about the 2024 season?
I'm just going to start. This is the first one on my list chronologically. And I know you didn't want to talk about, drivers winning races and the fallout and everything like that. But this driver did make the playoffs, so it really wouldn't have changed anything in the grand scheme of things. And to me, I go back to Richmond in the spring. Martin Truex Jr. getting a better restart late and getting that win at Richmond. His final season as a full-time driver, he would have that moment in the sun. He didn't get to go to victory lane this year, but he would have won a race. It's really neat for me to see when drivers can win races in their final years. And we saw it with Gordon at Martinsville. It was probably the most memorable. And to have that last, appreciation, if you will, of what it's like. And I don't know if this would have changed anything with Martin Truex Jr.'s decision. I don't think it would have. That's my opinion. I don't know that for sure, but maybe it does. Maybe he wins at Richmond. He's like, man, this was fun. This is the euphoria of winning and the celebrating with the guys and being in victory lane. And hey, we're having a great year. We're in the championship conversation. Maybe I'm not going to, retire, because it wasn't too far down that road when he had to make that decision. And so maybe there is a carryover effect. And so if I could change one thing, it would be Martin Truex Jr. winning at Richmond. And again, it wouldn't have changed anything in the big picture because Truex still made the playoffs. Denny Hamlin won that race. So it wasn't like he needed that win to lock himself in the playoffs. It just would have been a really good moment for a veteran driver who deserves that swan song.
I feel like we in this generation have sort of been robbed of some great potential send-off moments for these future Hall of Famers who have been retiring. Martin Truex Jr. winning in his final year would have been a nice feel-good story. Even though at the time, say that Richmond, when we didn't know it was his final year, but you could have said, all right, was this his last win ever? You don't know if this is, you could have at least acknowledged it. Harvick, for instance, right? Like you would have never thought, all right, that's it. I mean, maybe you would have, but Dale Jr., I don't think he won in his final year, right?
He did not know.
Tony, you did have Tony Stewart with that
That's a
Sonoma
good point.
moment with Hamlin. That was nice. But like for the most part, a lot of these guys that have had send-offs, you haven't had that, maybe Jeff Gordon, we're going to Homestead. I mean, that
Yeah,
was about as
that was
close as
cool.
you've gotten, right? But man, you would really like to see these sort of legends have that, just, because think about how many moments in NASCAR history you look back on um, for the feel good story, and there's not that, like, there's so few and far between that they last generations. Like, and this is an extreme example, but like 2001 Pepsi 400, right? Like that is like the ultimate feel good story. Um, but you just haven't had. There's been many great moments, great races, great finishes, but the feel good moment where the story all comes together about a certain driver, the sentimental value of it. Harvick winning in 2001 is another one that still gets talked about today. Stuff like that. But we haven't, this generation, we haven't really had enough of those where you go back and be like, man, that was just unbelievable. What a great story, heartwarming moment for somebody that had been around or deserved it or whatever it is. So I totally agree with you, and I think that's a great worthy pick to use on the Genie. So the next one here, maybe this is one you'll agree with, maybe not, given how you felt about this at times this year. I simply would have wished for no rain at
It's on
both
my
the Indy
list.
500, and the Coke 600. That one storm system that affected both races, it was just, think about that day if that doesn't happen, right? Larson has a good run overall. Yeah, he makes a mistake, but he does well for himself. And as we talked about 2 episodes ago, the hype and the rock star vibe that he had arriving at Coke 600, it would have just gone off flawlessly. He then would have gotten in that race. He would have maybe had a chance to win that race. As fast as the car was, at least Allgaier made it look. Plus, the way that the 600 ended, it was voted the worst race of the season because people were so mad that it didn't get restarted. That left a bitter taste in everybody's mouth there as well. That ruined the race. Larson aside, we didn't get to see the 600 this year. So there's so much that one rain system, that one storm system took away from us. And of course, obviously the waiver controversy and all that stuff afterwards. So yes, we could have very well done without that, and it would have been a great moment, a great day for motorsports. And instead, it just got totally messed up on multiple fronts. So yes, that would be a very easy thing that I would like to change about this season. And I don't think it would have affected much except giving us a feel-good moment.
Yeah, I mean, the only positive to come out of this is the fact that waiver sets you off. It's now like a trigger word for you, which is great because randomly I'll just say waiver to you and you'll just like start wigging out. It's great. I agree with everything you said. I would have liked to see the Indy 500 start on time and Larson run that race as he did. And he did a really good job. And I know the pit road penalty kind of, negated it a little bit, but still great month of May for him. And then you fly to Charlotte, start the 600 on time with a race car, I think at least was a contending race car. Whether he wins that race or not, who knows? But he certainly, I felt like, would have been in the mix. And when Tony Stewart did the double, he finished third in the Coca-Cola 600. I think Larson would have been in the conversation for that finish and maybe wins it. And really overall, we've had a lot of conversation this year about, Max versus Kyle, Verstappen versus Larson and who's better, that kind of thing. I think this was Kyle Larson's moment to really put a stamp on that conversation, saying, hey, I went to Indianapolis, qualified great, ran a good race, win Rookie of the Year honors. Then I fly down, hop in a stock car, start last in the field, and I go back and, finish top 5 or whatever. Like that would have been like, okay, Max, what can you do? That kind of thing. And we talk about Larson's ability to hop in different cars. Like this would have been the showcase for this. For a lot of people who maybe know who Kyle Larson is, but really don't know per se, this was their opportunity to really like, wow, this guy's a generational star. I think honestly, this would have really elevated Larson up in the conversation even more and put a spotlight on just how amazingly talented he is. And I'm excited for him to have that opportunity again. next year. And I think he's going to be going to Indy. I think he's going to have a great shot. Now he's got more experience and everything else. I think he's got a shot to win that race. I really firmly do. And then obviously he's going to have a really good chance to win the 600. But this was Kyle Larson's moment, if you will. And unfortunately, it was ruined beyond for factors outside of his control. And that's unfortunate.
Yep. Well, we certainly agree on that one. What is the next thing that you are asking the genie for?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Joe Gibbs Racing again, but a different driver. I've talked about Bell. We talked about Martin Truex Jr. I'm going to highlight Denny Hamlin here. And it's really that 75-point penalty, that big penalty that NASCAR threw down. Justifiably. The rule was the rule, and it was broken. There's no arguing that. But it really effectively felt like it took the wind out of their sails. They were not the same team the rest of the way. They were on their back foot pretty much throughout the entire playoffs. They never really looked like that team they were during the regular season. And I think part of that is the fact that they were down 10 playoff points they felt they should have had.
Really,
and if you actually, 14, I was going to say, if you look at it, that's a lot. I mean, that is a huge difference. And the conversation in round one at Atlanta and their strategy and everything like that. Well, you give them 14 additional points, that conversation's out the window. And then round two is a scramble. And then round three, they get eliminated. It changed the complexion of their playoffs. And again, a veteran driver who's never won a championship before, the tail end of his career, maybe not have a lot more of these opportunities to win that championship. This team was well positioned to do that. Their mindset throughout the regular season was, we're going to get as many points as we can get. We want to win the regular season championship, and we want to put ourselves in a spot come the playoffs where if we have a bad, a mechanical issue or something bad, some unfortunate luck befalls us, it's not going to cripple our playoff hopes. And they were doing that. At the time of the penalty, they were only 28 points behind Tyler Reddick for the regular season championship with 2 races to go. At Daytona, where Denny's really good, and going to Darlington, where Denny's really good. Great opportunity there to win the regular season championship. And even if you don't, finish second or third, finish higher up than he did. And that's more points, right? And unfortunately, it just that penalty happened for the engine. It took the wind out of their sails, and they were never the same team again. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not. But the reality is they just weren't the same team from that point forward.
And, I feel like every year, at least the last few years, we've said, was this Denny Hamlin's last best chance to win a championship? But now with the new crew chief, you would really say, wow, maybe that really was it. I mean, maybe that, missing that opportunity, if the genie gives them back their points and they are able to have a little bit more confidence and not have their the balloon popped, so to speak, going into the playoffs, maybe that's enough to change the mindset, change the mentality. That doesn't make you go fast necessarily, but strategy, stuff like that, right?
Absolutely.
And then you get a little bit of momentum, although Chris Gabehart doesn't believe in momentum. But maybe that's something that changes. But either way, it's at this point, Denny has just turned 44. David Smith from now RFK Racing has always said that driver's peak age is 39. So we typically are not going to see a lot more glory from drivers once they hit a certain point in their career, in their mid 40s. We don't know how long Denny has left, but to think that, suddenly it's going to be able to just maintain championship level contention form indefinitely is not realistic, unfortunately. So, I think you look at it and you go, wow, that was a huge missed opportunity. So if the genie could give them that back, I understand why you would say that.
And I will say this is maybe if they have a better playoff and they're in contention and maybe they make the championship 4, maybe JGR then is less inclined to switch Gabehart out of that crew chief role into the competition director role. Maybe they either look in a different direction, or maybe they say, hey, yeah, this is something we want to do, but we're just going to put this on hold for right now because this 11 team, man, they just had a great playoff again. They're right there on the cusp. Maybe we're going to run this back one more year and just give them one more chance. But the way things played out with JGR not winning a race since the end of June, Truex's performance kind of fell off. Ty Gibbs' performance fell off a cliff. Denny Hamlin's team was not the same team. There was a case to be made, whether we agree with it or not, and I don't think either of us really agree with it. there was a case to be made of, hey, you know what? I can see why they're kind of shifting things around a little bit, big picture, to be more competitive. But if this would have changed, maybe they just run this back and the 11 team stays intact. And then I think they go into this year in 2025 as one of the title contenders.
Man, it's so, looking in hindsight now, I was obviously all along so sure of Bell, right? Bell going to win the championship. If Bell just gets to the Final Four, he's going to win the championship. I think there was still enough evidence for that, given the average finish he was having in the playoffs, and he was performing well. He could have won Vegas,
absolutely.
all that stuff. But when you take a bigger step back and you talk about what you just mentioned, right? JGR as a whole, the performance overall, the last, now knowing the complete last half of the season where they did not win at all. And even though Bell was running well, it wasn't enough. And then his teammates really dropping all their performance. All three of those cars dropping their performance from what they had. And you go, oh, well, maybe it makes sense that Bell wasn't going to be the favorite at Phoenix or whatever, even though he had a good run. But it's just interesting. Sometimes you have to have the complete picture to look back. And even in the moment, remember, because to start the playoffs, all the playoff drivers are saying Bell's the favorite on our anonymous survey. So
he was just the outlier, though. Whatever Gibbs was the second half of the year, and they were not to the level they're usually at. The 20 team was the exception. They were leading a bunch of laps. They were winning stages. They were doing all of the things that you look at and say, that is a championship level team. The three other Gibbs cars, not so much. Their performance certainly was down. But the 20 team, there was never a moment really, I would say, for the last, 12, 13, 14 races where you looked at that team and you're like, man, I don't know about that. And then really come the playoffs, especially, like they were just on it. They were leading laps in a bunch of races. They were competitive. They weren't having mistakes. They were executing to a high level where you're like, this team is it. And it happens. It reminded me sometimes of the Hendrick era where Jimmy Johnson was dominating. And then there was times where his teammates were just not there. There was that one year where his three teammates, I don't even think did they win a race? They three of them didn't win a race or something like that. And Johnson, rolled to the championship, and you're like, what is going on here? But sometimes you get that. And this is the case with JGR, where one team was fine, but the other three teams obviously were impacted because there was something greater going on that we didn't know about.
But I wonder, on teams that are, say, three or more cars, are there really outliers that you can, because in some sense, looking back at it now, like the Penske thing, right? You were looking in, okay, Blaney's winning races. Logano was winning, right? So you look at that and you say, well, they clearly have winning speed in some capacity, regardless of how you want to say Logano won some of the races. They were winning. So, you're like, okay, well, JGR, none of them are winning, and you could say Bell is running well and he's doing everything he can to the best of their ability, but maybe it's sort of a warning sign that, hey, we got to Martinsville and, at that point we were 8 races in. This guy, as well as he had been running, as well as he had been executing, and again, they should have won Vegas, circumstances aside, but they didn't. They hadn't won. So it's like, again, even if he had made it to Phoenix, he would have been a winless in the playoffs Final Four driver, where other people were winning their way through rounds. So I'm just trying to go back and have an honest evaluation of how we got to this point and how my faith in them may have been slightly misplaced, but maybe not.
Yeah, it wasn't. And I'm looking at the numbers here. Second Richmond race, led 122 laps, finished 6th. Go to Kansas, starts on the pole, leads 122 laps. Vegas leads 155 laps. And then you look at their finishes, 4th, 5th, 7th, 6th, 2nd, 4th, 5th. That's really, really good. Now, Martinsville is the outlier, 22nd, because of things. But that your faith was more than justified. And we have seen in this playoff format, by the way, you don't need to win. You can win the championship without having to win the first 9 races. Now, you probably are going to have to win that 10th race. But we have seen drivers have a great playoff and not win and make the championship 4. And that would have been the case with Bell. And if Bell rolls into Phoenix with the results that I just read off, even without a win, people are going to be like, he's going back to track, all the things you said. He's going back to track where he dominated in the spring. Like, they're going to be the car to beat. And I don't think that changes the conversation. Your perception of Bell and it was accurate. It was spot on. It just circumstances conspired to keep them out of the playoff, and that's unfortunate. You mentioned really quick about 4-car teams and how sometimes you can kind of look at, is often the case that their performance across the board is dissimilar or whatever. Like SHR to me is the perfect example of that. Like for so many years, like Kevin Harvick was doing Kevin Harvick things, and then his teammates at SHR were simply not able to keep.
They weren't sharing with the rest of the team what they were doing, right? Is
not supposedly, yeah.
Right.
But
like, on a team like a Penske or a Hendrick or a Gibbs, where it sounds like they're all sharing, they should have mostly similar.
But you'll hear it now, even like crew chiefs who work with Chad Knaus back in the day. They'll be like, "Yeah, we shared. He shared. He didn't share everything, though." You know what I mean? There's always, I'm not. I don't want to say that Penske doesn't. Their crew chiefs are very good about the open book policy, et cetera, but you still do have to wonder a little bit of like, how much completely are you sharing? Now, Penske, I feels like that's the case, but you just never know. I mean, you sometimes maybe in the back of your mind, you got something you didn't write down in your notebook, so the other guy can see it.
I'm asking the genie as well for my third wish that the Bristol spring race would have unlocked the recipe for tire wear to fix short track racing. I'm not asking the Magic Genie to fix short track racing in general with the next gen car. I think that's too much of a reach for even the Magic Genie's powers. But just that, okay, hey, we learned something and we understood what happened in the spring race, and now Goodyear can say, okay, we went a little bit too far there, but we know exactly what we did. And now every short track race coming up, we're going to be able to tweak this to make it track dependent, maybe even weather dependent, whatever the case may be, grip dependent. And, we will now not have to worry anymore about the next gen kart short tracks because the tires were the solution. Now you could argue, as you did, that Martinsville, there was a lot of progress made with basically using the option tire as the tire for that race, which had some more wear and made it the best next gen short track race so far at Martinsville. But just in general, I think there was still a lot of like, oh man, like, again, when we saw NASCAR go back to Bristol night race, and it felt like a letdown because the expectations were different than what it was from the spring, and everybody was, built up, and even Goodyear and NASCAR thought it was going to be similar after the test they had there. So that just didn't turn out to be the case. So I just wish the Genie would have helped Goodyear understand whatever happened there and be able to replicate that, or again, tweak the formula, and then that would be the solution.
I agree with you 100% that it would have been great to know what it was. What was it about that tire that caused it to wear to that degree? And how do we replicate that going forward? So it would have been great. And the fact that nobody knows is baffling to me. Like, you have all these smart people on the Goodyear side and everything else, and everybody's got different theories, et cetera, but there really hasn't been one identified reason why. I will say, though, that the way Bristol unfolded put a light on a very dark tunnel of how to solve the short track problem, because it felt like from that race, and I want to throw this in there too, 2 weeks later we went to Richmond, and then the week after Richmond we went to Martinsville. So you had 3 short track races in really short order there. This really put a light on, we're going to fix the short track package and improve racing on this. It's not going to be because of tweaks to the car, whatever mechanical things you want to do. Really, it largely hasn't done anything, right? It's kind of been the same. But if we're going to solve this, it's going to be through Goodyear. It's going to be through a softer tire compound. And what Bristol showed was, if we give these guys soft tires, we're going to have much better racing on short tracks, regardless of the package. And that was the impetus going forward. And it was underlined at Richmond when you had that the first 30 laps or so were ran in wet weather conditions on a tire that, the wet weather tire that wore considerably, and we had a lot of comers and goers. And then a few weeks later, we go to Martinsville under normal conditions, and it was a largely lethargic race. And you're like, oh my goodness, with no tire wear. And so after Martinsville, we're like, okay, we saw what happened at Bristol. We saw what happened in the first 30 laps at Richmond, and we saw what happened at Martinsville. What is the common denominator here? It is a softer tire that wears, where drivers have to manage it. And the drivers who know how to manage their tires are going to be best rewarded. And to me, while it's unfortunate and it sucks that we don't know exactly why Bristol happened the way it did, at least it showed us, hey, to get better on short tracks, it's going to be through Goodyear. They're probably the most important component of this. And I would argue that what we saw at Martinsville in the fall, and I'll even throw Richmond in there, the second Richmond race, where they brought the option tire out for the first time in a points race, it really was because of what happened at Bristol and the eye-opening moment of, hey, tire wear is essential here. Yeah, we got to be careful about going too far, but if we're going to make things better, it's going to be through that avenue and nothing we do with the car. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I wish we could figure this out, and I hope they can do it. But I feel like I am much more optimistic about the short track package than I honestly have since the next gen car has been around, because I do feel like now at least there's a roadmap of producing good racing, and here's that roadmap. Here's what you need to do.
I believe we've each used 3 of our genie wishes. Is that correct?
Yeah, but you had one of mine, so I'm down to 1 here, man. I mean, I got some others on my list I can talk about if you want.
Oh, you've used 4 of yours.
Yeah, we both had rain at Indy. We both had race manipulation. So so yeah, I've got I had the Hamlin penalty and the Truex. Yeah. So I'm down. I got 1 left here, bud.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me use one of my other ones first, since I have
Please,
2
by all means.
And I hope this isn't one of yours.
I'm sure it is.
I would like the genie to have gone back.
Oh boy.
And I mean, and this would actually be before the season, but in terms of things changing about the season, I would want the genie to have helped NASCAR come up with a way to fix the DVP towing policy. The genie gives them a even faster, better device or a way or whatever to inflate those tires or whatever it is when the cars are stranded, so we don't have some of the controversies and headaches that we saw like at Talladega, or different things where people are being ruled out of races that didn't seem necessarily with a perfectly drivable car. Josh Berry, Watkins Glen situation, stuff like that. All that kind of stuff. All the headaches that we saw, or the Ryan Blaney. I'm listing too many things. Ryan Blaney, Watkins Glen, Josh Berry.
Yep. There was 3 times in 4 playoff races: Watkins Glen, Kansas, and then a week off at Bristol. And then you go to Talladega. So 3 times in 4 races where the DVP clock was the central storyline.
And obviously, that's annoying. It seems so unnecessary, but obviously it's a physics issue with this car and the tire, the way it was. I just wish that the genie could just snap its fingers and alleviate this concern.
I had that on my list originally. I kind of had a broad officiating thing because it seemed like officiating was certainly in the news for a lot of different points this year, especially in the playoffs. I mean, I agree. Like, the DVP clock needs to change and the rule needs to change. And NASCAR will say that they officiated it how they normally do, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but when you park a car like Barry at Kansas, who's doesn't have any damage and is able to continue, and then the very next week at Talladega, you're towing cars back who've got serious damage to pit road and allowing them to make changes, that's frustrating. And it's certainly it creates a perception that the rule is not being applied as written, whether that's accurate or not. Sometimes perception becomes reality. I agree with you. I wish we could have just avoided that in general. Honestly, I would say big picture, I think officiating overall probably needs you could probably take a magic wand and change a few things about the officiating this year. It certainly felt like it was the focus, sometimes probably overly so, especially Martinsville. But again, even in some of these cases where, Martinsville wasn't necessarily a NASCAR problem. It's not like NASCAR officiated that race poorly or anything. Like the teams put them in that box, but particularly with the DVP clock, like something needs to change. We're going to see some changes going into next year. What that looks like yet, we don't know, but it certainly is going to have a different look.
I had toyed with also, putting in having the Genie give NASCAR a next level technology system to help with officiating and make calls and all that stuff. Because as you mentioned, we talked about it too many times this year, but in general, like it's not just the technology, it's the inconsistent application of some of the rules. I mean, you could argue, okay, technology maybe would have helped in a situation like at the Roval, where Leland Honeyman's car is buried and they don't see it. And then there you have the Kligerman controversy at the Xfinity race. But there's also times when, as you mentioned about Talladega and the DVP policy, where they come out afterwards and they say, well, this week after Kansas, we decided that we don't want to take good cars out of the race, but that's not what they had said, even going into the race, even on Sirius the next week, defending the Josh Berry thing at Kansas. And again, the Ryan Blaney thing at Watkins Glen was a tough thing as well. So, it's just like, well, this just changed out of nowhere. Like, why is this changing now? And nobody knew about it. Okay, well, now this is the new rule. And it's just like, so even, technology system isn't going to necessarily solve some of the officiating stuff, but, at least the DVP stuff would have been an easier way to, figure out what they need to do. I'm sure the policy is changing, but at the time it was pretty frustrating. So we each have one wish left. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I'm curious to hear what your final wish is. I don't think there's no way that it's going to be a repeat of mine. So
I don't know. We'll see. Mine is centers around the other hot button topic this year. Austin Dillon at Richmond. I am fine with him in turning Logano on the last lap, whether you agree with it or not. Like that's short track racing. Like guys get aggressive, they move guys. If I had a magic genie, I would say, Austin, do not turn Denny Hamlin. Do not right hook Denny Hamlin. Do not put NASCAR in that box. Do not make them go back to the old encumbered finish where you get the win and everything else, but you don't get the benefits of actually winning in the playoff and everything like that. It just opened up a can of worms. It put NASCAR in a bad spot. It put the sport in a black eye. And it caused all sorts of conversation about ethics and the racing and that kind of thing. It's unfortunate. Again, drivers, I think you get one. I don't know if you get two. If I'm Austin Dillon, I would have said, hey, figure out a way to get to Logano's bumper and not spin yourself out. But that's what I would have done because that would have been interesting. And then the domino effect of that is Austin Dillon's in the playoffs. And
who would that have knocked out? Ty Gibbs?
Ty Gibbs, yeah.
Gotcha.
It would have knocked out Ty Gibbs. And so it would have been, it would have also underscored the fact of how important winning is during the regular season. And it's great, you can be great during the regular season, but if you don't win, you put yourself in jeopardy. And all of this importance on winning would have been right there at the forefront of, hey, yeah, you've got a bad year, but you know what? If you want to overcome that and figure out a way out of this, figure out a way to win a race. And it also would have kind of been an interesting dynamic of you would have had. So if I have it right here, let me just make sure I've got this right. 1 second here. It would have been Richmond. Sorry. So 3 weeks out of 4, Richmond, Daytona, Darlington, you would have had guys basically out of nowhere winners. Harrison Burton, Chase Briscoe, Austin Dillon, who came out of nowhere. Nobody expected them to win, won a race and put themselves in the playoffs. That's a great story. That's great storylines and drama and all of those things. And I think that would have been, much better for the sport and would have eliminated an unnecessary controversy that, again, it kind of was this cloud that hovered over for at least a week, if not longer.
See, I don't want that to be, I'm glad that happened because I think NASCAR was well overdue for a line of rough driving. And in fact, I think we saw NASCAR because the Lane Riggs thing was initially an outlier, the Truck Series penalty he got for 2 laps of rough driving. And
Nashville.
then
Yep.
you saw after that, you saw NASCAR more willing to issue rough driving penalties. And I think that almost kind of went hand in hand with the Austin Dillon thing. I think the Austin Dillon thing was a bridge too far, and it was okay. We need to have some sort of driving standards. As Steve O'Donnell said at the end of the season, the era of boys have at it is over. And so I think that was necessary. This is a professional racing series. You can't just have people blatantly clean guys out. And you could argue that the Austin Dillon thing happened because he cleaned a second guy out en route to winning. But I do think that NASCAR has opened or left themselves some room here that if somebody goes in a situation at the end of a race where they're clearly not going to win, and they just intentionally, blatantly drive through someone with no intention of, they're just trying to absolutely wreck them in order to win the race. I think NASCAR, we don't know for sure, but they may step in and say, no, you can't win your way into the playoffs like that. And this is the precedent that has been set because of the Dillon thing. Now, I know you won't necessarily agree with that, but and we don't know if that's even the case. But now at least there's some level of minimum driving standards that I think it was overdue. So I would not want to go back and change that because I think it was going to happen at some point.
NASCAR has already shown to me, Lane Riggs thing happened well before Austin Dillon. So NASCAR has already shown, and that Carson Hocevar is another example of that. They've already shown a willingness to park guys for multiple laps if you do something that's a bridge too far. What I don't want, we just talked about officiating. I want less officiating, not more. I want NASCAR to make fewer calls that are in the gray and not in the black and white, because I don't want officiating to dictate things. I want NASCAR to be a rough and tumble, short track rules kind of thing. I like that. That's the ethos of NASCAR. That is going back to its foundation. Guys moved each other out of the way on the last lap for wins. It happens. That's what NASCAR is about. I don't want, and what I'm concerned about, and I haven't seen it yet, I think NASCAR is going to exercise good judgment on this. I don't think they're going to start issuing penalties, for last lap things if a guy puts a bumper somebody and spins somebody out for a win. I really don't.
No,
I really truly believe
that.
But I worry. But what I said at the Dillon thing, and I say now, is I'm worried about that can of worms though. Of now, every time something like that happens, we're looking at NASCAR going, "Ooh, are they going to call this one? Are they not?" Like before, I've been like, "No, that's what this is. This is NASCAR, man. This is short track racing," and I don't want to see that, and I get worried about that a little bit. And this was a unique situation, so because he got two, he turned Denny Hamlin. I think that you look at that and say, listen, if he doesn't do that, they're going to let him keep that win. And I firmly believe that. NASCAR hasn't said that one way or another, but my interpretation of the conversations I've had with people is like, that was too far. Okay. But I just worry that now we're asking NASCAR to officiate more and to come in and start ruling on things before where it's like, that's part of NASCAR. This is what makes NASCAR unique and different from other forms of racing. No, we don't want this to be a free-for-all, and there needs to be some line, but I always felt like there was a little bit of a line. And so I just worry about that a little bit, but so far it hasn't happened. So that is good.
No, there wasn't a line, and we've debated that on the podcast. I'm not I don't want anybody to think that I'm advocating for no contact. I'm not advocating for F1 or IndyCar unavoidable contact type standards. I want there to be contact. NASCAR is a physical form of racing. Bump and runs are fantastic. I don't agree with, again, there's very few incidents I could point to and say, this is where I would draw the line. But again, the other one is Ty Gibbs, Brandon Jones, Martinsville Xfinity race. That's another one where I would have said, I'm sorry, no, you cannot win the race that way. You cannot, we will not have that. So that's not two cars. That's one car. But if I saw that in a race, I would say, all right, NASCAR, you need to step in. And I guess that, you're saying that they shouldn't there. But I want that to be enforced as like, look, you cannot win that way.
What's the difference between that? I agree with you. Like the Ty Gibbs, Brandon Jones things was bad. And it was really bad. It was ugly for a lot of different reasons. And if you want to throw a penalty there, sure. But Alex Bowman spins out Denny Hamlin in the closing laps at Martinsville. What is that not a penalty then too?
No, it was an accident. It was
what define an accident though?
They were racing hard. He made a mistake. Ty Gibbs going down to the corner at Martinsville and blatantly cleaning out his teammates so he didn't win.
But if you're a driver, you could say, "Oh no, that was an accident. I got in there too hard. I made a mistake and I slid up." Like
officials get paid money so that they can make these calls. They have to make these calls. That's their job. That's why they're in this role. That's why they are at the highest racing series in America. So, and they've ascended to this level through lower ranks, short track ranks. They've been race directors at various tracks or whatever, right? Or various series. And now they've ascended this top level because they understand racing. They know racing. They should be empowered to make these calls, make these judgments, and enforce standards that don't make their series look like clowns. That's all I want. So I don't think that's that much to ask.
In general, I don't trust officials in any sport. I don't want them to make calls. Their opinions and their interpretations often vary from incident to incident. There is no consistency. I want black or white. I don't want shades of gray.
All right. So are we down to the last one?
This is it. This is the last one.
All yours? Okay.
I've used all mine.
This is a little bit of a journey here.
Oh boy.
So
buckle
bear
up
with me because it's a little bit of a stretch. It's a little bit of a stretch.
Shocked.
But since I'm asking the Magic Genie for things, and I recognize I already said that the Magic Genie's power could not magically fix the next gen car, right? And on short tracks, like there's limits to what we could do here. But I'm hoping that the Magic Genie could have started a construction project in a place called Fontana, California, and that this season, instead of racing the Clash at the LA Coliseum again, that would have been the inaugural race for the revised Auto Club Speedway short track. And so, by the way, it would have rained. So I would like the Magic Genie to also get rid of the rain.
Jeez. You got a lot of wishes you're using up here, bud.
It's all combined. As I said, it's a stretch, but so there would have been 2 years at the Coliseum. The Magic Genie would have gotten the NASCAR to get the Auto Club Speedway short track going. And then we would have seen the Clash there. And then they would have announced, it would have been a success. Maybe not because of the short track package, but let's just pretend Magic Genie. Okay. And then they would have announced the 2025 finale, moving to the Fontana short track instead of Phoenix for next year. So there would have had multiple implications. So you could have the Clash of Bowman Gray still for next year. You would have moved the championship race from Phoenix to Auto Club short track. We would have seen already one under its belt. So gotten that out of the way as an exhibition. And they would have had a year and a half to hype up the next race here is the championship. Get excited. Brand new place. We're going to get it. Lots of hype. And I don't know. Am I asking too much here from the Magic Genie on this one?
Well, you're asking a lot because honestly, you've got to go back at this point. If your timeline would have meant they would have started construction during the pandemic. And so there's implications with the pandemic. Are we going to get rid of that too? And that never happened.
No, the Magic Genie can make the short track.
Okay.
Like that.
Hey, listen, I'm all for it. I mean, NASCAR needs a race in Southern California. You look at the options they have there; they're just not there. And maybe we'll see. I would say that keep an eye on Long Beach and see what happens there. Now that Roger Penske owns it, never say never. I mean, I'm saying
the Long Beach thing. Come on,
just never say never, man. Never say never. Why not? If you're NASCAR and you got a race in Southern California. Like you don't have many options. Like, San Diego, maybe. Okay, we'll see. It's a street course race. Okay. But then what? That's only going to be a couple years, few years. Like you're going to need something beyond that. So that's why I say, like, keep an eye on Long Beach. You never know. Not saying it's happening, but you need to race in Southern California. And so your idea of, hey, having Fontana be around is great because you'd have a championship race on a short track. Let's presume that they're going to go the configuration that they announced back in 2020, which is basically like a Martinsville Bristol hybrid, if you will, long straightaways, really big banking in the corners, like that kind of configuration in the LA market for your championship. Oh man, that solves a lot of problems, and it puts a focus on your sport in a great way. Drivers racetrack, it sounds like. None of this Phoenix crap of go there and it's like, no man, this race is just whatever. Okay, that would have been great. We'll see. I don't know. Here's a question for you though. Do you think Fontana in whatever configuration? Do you ever think it comes back, or is it DOA?
My thing is, when you look at the Southern California problem and the limited options they have, the simplest thing, they have a property that they could build a racetrack on, right? And they sold the rest of that property for $559 million, right? I don't know how much it costs to build whatever they wanted to build.
A lot.
Okay, a lot. And I'm sure they needed to use that $559 million for other things too. But I mean, can you not just give us something there? Okay, like maybe it's not going to be the highest caliber or something, with all the luxury suites or the fan zone amenities. I don't know, but can you get us a racetrack there so we can see some racing in Southern California? I mean, that's it just seems like the most logical, easiest path. I mean, I say easiest, I know you'd have to build something, but I mean, why not? I just, what am I missing here?
You're missing the money factor. And I will say this, from the conversation I've had with people on the very high level of NASCAR, they want to be in Southern California. They want the Fontana project to happen. Like they want that to come to fruition. But it is so expensive. Not only do you normal operating costs to build a racetrack, it's expensive, right? But in California alone, it's even more expensive. The cost to do business out there is so high right now. And many people tell you this in NASCAR and outside NASCAR, unreasonably high, to such a degree that like it handcuffs you. So you almost have to overspend to do anything you want to do. And it comes down to money. It's not a matter of desire or want to or anything like that. They want that project to happen. There's a reason they still have that sliver of land there earmarked for a short track. There's a reason they haven't sold it off yet. They want to do it, but it costs money. And I hear what you're saying about, hey, let's just spend a little bit. Maybe you downsize a little bit and don't do it quite to the level you're going to do it at. Okay, and there's a conversation to be had there. But I would say is if you're going to do something like that, you got to spend the money to do it right. Like you can't cut corners because we have seen what happens when you build racetracks and you cut corners and it's not to a good level. If you're going to have a racetrack in Southern California to tap into the LA market that delivers what you want to be as a championship worthy facility, you've got to make sure you do it the right way. And that's going to take a lot of money. So I don't know. I do these mailbags on The Athletic all the time. And I kid you not, Jeff, every time I do a mailbag, I get questions about Fontana. Everybody's that, we hear about too, the tweet ups or anything else, like what's going to happen with Fontana. And I don't know, like it's a wait and see right now to see what happens with it going forward. The desire is there to do it. My understanding is they're going to wait and they're going to hold out as long as they can until they just can't hold out anymore. But until things change in California and the cost of doing business goes down, I don't know. I know, NASCAR's gotten a lot of, part of this as this was unfolding was, NASCAR had a TV deal that was coming up. They need to get that figured out. They needed to figure out, okay, we've got a new TV deal. We know how much money we have coming in now and for operating costs and everything else. And then we had to get the charter deal done because now we need to know how much we're paying the teams and everything else. So those were the two big parts of this. And those have largely been done. I know the charter stuff is still a little unsettled, obviously, with the lawsuit. But those two big things are kind of done now. Now that the third thing is, it's still about the cost of doing business in California, and that's out of NASCAR's control. So we'll see. I just don't know.
Again, I don't know the numbers, right? But Daytona Rising was done for $400 million. Now, today you say, okay, well, construction costs, inflation, what has that gone up? So would that be now like a $600 million project, $700 million project? But either way, let's say it, okay, let's be generous and say it even doubled today from what Daytona Rising costs. Okay, that's $800 million. But that is a massive, massive, massive facility project that they did, right? We're talking about just the front stretch essentially of a short track, not the cavernous grandstands with all the luxury suites that they built and the multi-level and all. I mean, Daytona Rising was incredible. I mean, Daytona International Speedway is as good as it gets NASCAR track wise. It's just unbelievable thing that they did there. But this is way smaller footprint. So again, what are we talking? I would love to know what the cost estimates are that they're staying away from. I mean, is it 300 million, 400 million? Yeah, of course, that's a lot of money. I get it. But when you talk about, well, they spent $50 million on the Chicago street race for a place they don't even own. This is an investment where if you build this place, we don't have to talk about, oh, where can they go in Southern California? And we could talk about, this is the new championship place. This is the new, whatever. And a great market that they have, a great footprint they have in a big market. So I don't know. It's just obviously I'm, admittedly biased. I used to live in the Fontana area. I used to work for the local paper. That's a place that is near and dear to my heart. I just wish that those fans there deserve to see some racing. And the closest track right now is Las Vegas, 3 hours away, or 4 if you're in LA. So anyway, that is my wish.
Fair. I'd like to see that too.
What were you considering that did not make your list? I was surprised a little bit that neither of us had Kyle Busch, but hey,
so
but by the way, shout out to that streak. I mean, he holds the record for the most consecutive seasons with a win. He didn't get to 20, but 19 is pretty damn good. Logano might beat that someday. I don't know, but yeah. But other than that, were there any other considerations you had?
What's Logano's streak? He's won a race every year since 2012, right? Yeah, that's he's got a chance. He's got a good chance.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a chance, and that will
for sure.
That will definitely irritate Kyle Busch. To no end, right?
Actually, the Kyle Busch thing was on my list, and it was, as I was going through this, I had to be really careful of the sliding doors thing of like, hey, this happens, and then this, and that's kind of laid out at the beginning of the show. But one of them was the close finishes. If you change the close finishes or something like that, and let's go back to Atlanta. What if Daniel Suarez doesn't win that race? He doesn't make the playoffs. What is Daniel Suarez's future with Trackhouse? We know Trackhouse loves him. He likes being at Trackhouse, but his contract was up. Are they less inclined to bring him back if he misses the playoffs this year? What does that mean for Zane Smith's future? That kind of thing. Also, that finish at Atlanta, Ryan Blaney was in the mix, obviously. So was Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was involved in very, Daytona, Darlington this year, close finishes. If one of those slides differently, he makes the playoffs. That streak goes on. What does that mean for Kyle Busch? What does it mean for Richard Childress Racing? Theoretically, I mean, they could have had 2 cars in the playoffs if the Dillon thing goes differently as well. How does that play out? And then I go back to Kansas and Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher doesn't win at Kansas by the slimmest of margins. He wins that race. He makes the playoffs. It just changes so much. And so got to be really careful about how you look at all of that. But then the other side of that too is,
but then add in, Austin Cindric, Joey Logano.
Sure, absolutely.
He wouldn't have made the playoffs if you don't
absolutely
have 5 at Nashville. Harrison Burton doesn't make the playoffs.
Oh yeah,
there's so many close little,
And that's why I didn't want to go down that road, because then you're kind of playing the what if game and it's a sliding doors thing. So that is why I left it off. I just thought it was
sliding doors. You like that movie?
Isn't that with Gwyneth Paltrow? Yeah, I've never seen it. So
wait,
not a big fan of hers.
What are you're mentioning the sliding doors effect, but you've never seen the movie?
No, but I know them. I mean, it's the term's been around forever. I mean, the movie took it from the term.
We watched that in school, in class.
We did?
Yes. We watched it in class to study and talk about, I don't know if it was like a philosophy class or something. Yeah, we watched it in class. It was so, obviously, for those of you who don't know, like one thing, right? Like can change the outcome of your whole life or the whole one little wrinkle, right?
That
But
butterfly effect, right?
yeah, right.
Yeah, no, never seen
Sorry,
it.
go ahead.
Not really a fan of hers, to be honest with you. Saw Shakespeare in
I thought
Love.
you
I
just
hated
said
that
you
movie.
were. I thought you just
No,
said
no,
you were a fan. Oh, you said you
no. I
were
said
a
I'm
fan.
not a fan. Not a fan.
Not a fan.
Not really. No, not really doing. So
She named her kid Apple.
she did. She was. She's still married to Chris Martin from Coldplay.
No, God, what your pop culture? You shouldn't have even said that. That is so. They've been separated for so long.
Oh, they have. I'd say there you go. I
Oh
had
my
no idea.
God.
I didn't
Oh my
realize that.
gosh.
No idea. Hey,
Really?
at least I know Chris
Have
Martin has
you
Coldplay.
that okay, that's good. That's good. You didn't know that Jared Leto was 30 Seconds to Mars, so
No, I know him as the actor. I had no idea. I had no idea.
you're like, he's more known for his acting than his music. And I was like, what about 30 Seconds to Mars? You're like, what?
Who? What? No idea. No idea.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
So no, yeah, one, and then the other thing too, the byproduct of any of that, if is Ty Gibbs doesn't make the playoffs, and then his year looks, I don't know if it looks much differently, because I mean they kind of flamed out in the playoffs, but that's just then you don't have a Gibbs car that makes the playoffs, and so just a lot of what ifs this year.
I just looked it up. It was, by the way, 2014 that Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow famously framed it as unconsciously uncoupling. Remember that?
Oh, is that where that term comes? I've heard that.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes. That was 2014.
I gotta put that term in my back pocket. That's a good term.
Yes, and now Chris Martin's with Dakota Johnson. You know who that is? The actress.
Oh, wasn't
No,
she she's Don Johnson's daughter, and she was like 50 Shades of Grey,
she's
right?
yeah. Okay, see, there we go, Jordan.
Yeah,
I'm
see,
proud of you. I'm
look
proud
at
of you,
that.
buddy. We're making some gains here. We're making
All
some pop
right,
culture gains.
all right.
All right, there we go.
And then
All
Gwyneth
right.
Paltrow dated Ben Affleck, right?
Uh, God, that was a long time ago. Did that
Yeah,
happen? Ben
yeah. I thought
Affleck
that
was.
was, yeah.
That was. Wow, you're really stretching my memory now.
I
Did
think that
they?
was the case. Like, yeah, like the mid to late 90s. Yeah, because he was also in Shakespeare in Love.
Oh, that was pre-Chris. Yeah, that they dated on and off between 1997 and 2000.
Yep.
Man, you really know your, uh, you're way back pop culture. But then at some point in your life, you apparently
I know.
just dropped off.
I gotta one. Then I started focusing on real life and like work and everything, and then everything else is just shut off.
2014 to present, Jordan is not aware of what
I'm good at
anything in
movies.
the anything in the playoff elimination era, pop culture wise.
Yeah.
Jordan's out. All right,
Oh, that's
listen,
funny.
Jordan, we really need some people's help here. So
Yes.
if you're listening to this, please don't tune out yet, because we need your help for what we think is going to be our final podcast of the year. It's our final podcast of last year, was our giant listener mailbag. And what we're asking you to do is email us a question. Please just email me. It'll be easier for me to streamline this and put it in a big document that both Jordan and I can look at. My email address is jgluck, JGLUCK, at theathletic.com. And we would like you to email us your question. And man, we had so many good ones last year. I think we only were able to get through like 20 in like 2 hours or something.
Yeah, it was a long podcast. It was fun though.
But we had like 100 questions or something. So sorry, we won't be able to. I can just tell you right now, we're not gonna be able to get to all of them. But looks like we'll be doing probably one more podcast before we call it a year. Probably in I'm going to be going to a little quick Disneyland getaway.
Ooh.
Surprising my kids. They do not know this. Hopefully they don't listen to the podcast. I don't think they listen to the podcast. So later this week, I'm surprising them with a trip to Disneyland.
Thanks for the invite, by the way. I appreciate
My
that.
wife and I, well,
you know how much I love Disney.
You're more of a Disney World person.
I am a Disney World person.
But anyway, so we're going to be doing that little last minute trip. And then before I go off to the in-laws for Christmas, we'll be doing one more episode. So again, you guys have maybe about a week or so to get those questions in. I'm not advertising this on social media because I just want the questions come from just our listeners, because we appreciate you guys. And so again, jgluck at theathletic.com, and I will make a document, and Jordan and I will pick out our favorite questions. You looking forward to that?
I love it. My favorite. I think we've done this a few times. It's one of my favorite episodes every year. So looking forward to it. Great way to end the year. Appreciate the support. You guys come up with some great questions. So it'll be fun.
All right. Well, in the meantime, thanks as always for listening, and we will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody.